Hey folks, it's Nate. Thanks for joining me once again as we look to the horizon. We're trying a bit of a new camera setup here. I've made a few minor adjustments. We're a bit closer in. We have a nicer angle, I think, for filming. And hopefully, when I record in the afternoons, there will be less glare. Not a problem we have right now. It's after the sun is set today. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. In the meantime, let's get on to our weekly writing vlog. And this week I have been focusing mostly on editing Burning Bright. I'm about a chapter and change into that. It's been slower work than I anticipated. I had hoped that this would go quite quickly. I forgot that the world building in the first third of the story is a shambles. I made several thematic and research based, for lack of a better way to put it, changes in the first two or three chapters of the story that I'm going to need to iron out, and it's slower going than I anticipated it would be. I knew I was going to have to do some of this cleanup work, but it's more of it than I had anticipated. And I'm of two minds about this. Obviously, it's better to have as much detail as you can hammered down before you start writing to make this part of the process go smoother. However, this is different from doing an outline because as you world build, you may find that you have ideas that contradict each other, ideas that you may have put in place at different times and not realized contradicted each other, for example, or you may just not have. I know that in this case, I had an idea which let me put together a couple of elements that I've been wanting to use for a while to better explain something than what I had originally intended. And without diving too deep into what that meant, it did mean I had to go back and retcon some of the antagonist's abilities and what he could do, and how that functioned, what the protagonists knew about it and when they knew it, all of which requires me now to rewrite some of the dialogue, some of the text, and even remap out some of the scenes that are I'm working on right now. And all in all, it's fairly painstaking. I have to really think about details as they relate to certain things and say, okay, is this valid under the new paradigm or not? And if I was working in a world with more canon built up about it, with a more extensive world building document spread out, I would probably be. I definitely would not have the luxury of redefining things to the extent that I do now. On the other hand, the fact that I would be working within those confines in some ways makes it easier. A lot of people say you should be able to tell whatever story you want and not worry about rules or world building or stuff like that. And I actually find that having well-built worlds makes storytelling much easier because they clearly close off things that the characters can do, so you don't have to overheat your brain as much, considering all the things you can do and how it will play into your thematic elements and so on and so forth. Now, if you want to work in a theme or an idea, it doesn't necessarily work in your world building. There are ways to do it, but that's not really what I'm looking at talking about here. Mostly, after this experience, I am of two minds about world building. I always tried to do a great deal of it in the past before I set pen to paper, so I wouldn't have to try and juggle world elements and character building at the same time. A great example of that is the Hexwood / Roy Harper world was very well defined in my mind before I really started writing either the script for Hexwood or a Roy Harper adventure. And that was nice because it really let me focus on telling people about the world without being explicit about it. I could show that they were, using these world elements in specific ways just by showing them being used. I didn't have to essentially try and organize my thoughts on the way the magic in that world worked by having somebody exposit about it. Now, you can certainly do that, and there are even times to do that. A great example of that is when somebody is expositing on magic that is not completely understood. You can set up areas where the magic is not well known, and then you can have the people misspeak on it to create mystery or anticipation, or even the shock of a reveal or something like that. There's a lot of things you can do with that. However, as I've been writing Burning Bright, I had only the most basic idea of how I wanted the basics of the world to work, and even of how the world was laid out, and how people referred to themselves. I was originally thinking that the nations would have formal names. I decided to move away from that after a little bit. Instead, people refer to themselves more as a tribal group and what's near them. So we have the people of the grass, the people of the rivers, the people of the mountains, and so on and so forth. And if you're wondering what they do when there are more than one group of people of the rivers, well, that's complicated, and it will actually be addressed in a future story. At least I'm currently planning to do that. So I don't want to get too deeply into that. But that was not a world building element, for example, that I had very well nailed down. The magic in the world is geometry, like literally certain shapes have powers associated with them. They do certain things. The world reacts to them. And I like that idea. It was like words of power, except with shapes instead of words, obviously. And it kind of ties nicely into the idea that there's, also power in numerals, which is a very old idea. And we see important numerals popping up in a lot of different systems of thought around the world. So I kind of wanted to roll that in to kind of make this organic culture where numerals and shapes have importances and meanings. And that was about all I had when I started, so I hadn't really thought a whole lot about how that would actually play out. And now I'm having to go back and retcon my early chapters to match the eventual, more systematized ideas I had as I came to the end of the story, which is not a kind of editing I have done before, but I find it's interesting, and it really keeps me focused on the details of a scene in ways that I have not been in previous editing passes. And I wonder if that is good. Just because it keeps you on your toes more, you have to think more about what you're actually editing, which is the whole point of editing, to think about your story and really try and tighten it up. So I'm of two minds about this. I like being very comfortable in a world already when I begin to tell a story there. But I think there are benefits to writing a story this way that I will have to explore more. And as I proceed, I will, I think, keep you appraised of how this has been going and what I ultimately think of it. We'll see. Anyway, that's all I got for you today. Let me know what you think of world building and editing down in the comments below, as well as what you think of this camera setup. I'm hearing a bit of an echo from this particular angle now that I've been here for a while, so I may not continue using it. Anyways, that's all I've got for you today. There's a like button and a subscribe button down below, and I will talk to you later.